So in the trucking industry, and this is more of a free form video. I don't expect anybody to see this. If hey, if you happen to see it, that's great. You're welcome to do it. But I'm not going to spend any time trying to actually I'm not going to spend the time to be concise. I'm not going to worry about concession here. I'm going to just talk to you as though you were maybe standing in front of me, whoever you are. And so to continue with what I was pointing out about as far as like in the trucking sector, this is one of the issues that actually the biggest issue is that you're not seeing freight rates keep up with the real world inflation. Real world inflation, of course, as we all know, is upwards of 30%. It's actually probably higher than that now. You figure when you compound all of this, and it doesn't feel like it because, well, what they're doing is they're seeing, you're printing money. Right, they're printing money and they're bailing out a handful of companies, and they just keep bailing these companies out through their stock purchases, which is that's a very clever way to do it. It is. Hats off to the guys who run the scam. It's a good scam. I mean, it really is very clever. Most people are not going to figure it out. Vast majority of people are not going to figure how any of this stuff works out. All they're going to do is say, "Oh my God, shit sucks, and I need to work harder." That's what most people will do. Some of us out here can do math. And and not just math, but the right kind of math. Meaning, let me explain this to you, for you mathematicians out there, or other physicists that may follow me. The right kind of math, meaning that you're applying the principles to a specific industry, and you're making sure that those equations are going to work. And in most cases, in most businesses right now, they don't work. You're seeing this with franchises. I covered franchises a couple of days ago. Look at what's happening with them. A lot of guys are spending a lot of money. It's sort of like the $2 million question, right? The $2 million question. If you had $2 million, what would you do? Well, you got to factor the cost of capital. If you buy bonds at 4%, you can sit on your ass and do nothing and make $80,000 a year doing nothing. 80 grand a year to do nothing, and all you're doing is paying capital gains tax. That's it. So that's, if you want to call that cost of capital, you could chalk that up to cost of capital, and then you could. So then any business that you engaged in has to make that money plus a profit on top of that to justify it. So in other words, you have to make not just, let's say you wanted to make 10%. Right, so you want to make 10%. Well, you actually have to make more than 10% because you also have the cost of capital. So you have to make 10%, which is $200,000 a year. Good luck with that. And but you also have to make $80,000 on top of that, because of the rough cost of capital. Because you could sit on your ass and do nothing and get $80,000. So you've got to factor that in. And I'm thinking that most people don't actually do that. I'm thinking most businesses and guys who start businesses don't probably think like that. What they think is that, oh, well, I'll use this investment capital. Yeah, you can use it as investment capital to start something. I agree. But you also have to factor in that, like, well, what else could you do that you didn't have to do anything, right? And if sitting on your ass doing nothing and get $80,000 a year to do literally nothing, right? And you still have the principal of $2 million, which is tied up in bonds, for example. So the government will tax people into oblivion to pay you your $80,000. You'll even print the money to worthlessness. That's something you have to factor in. And I paint a bleak picture, and it's not me painting this picture, by the way. It's me pointing out reality. Like, well, because I know I get the question every now and again, like, well, what should I do with my money? Like, that's the problem. Your money shouldn't be devaluing the way that it is. You see, if your money wasn't devaluing, you wouldn't necessarily have to do anything with your money. I don't know how many people don't understand this. You real estate bros have got to be the worst among them. And I'm not picking on you guys. I'm just telling you what I see. If you've got a currency that doesn't lose any value of any kind, right? It has zero inflation, and you made zero return, if you want to call it that, on your money, did you lose anything? No. No, you lost nothing. Now, you didn't exert any energy, right? but you didn't lose anything either, right? You had no loss, but you had no gain, right? You stayed even. Real estate bros, I see a lot of guys working really hard to make 15%, only to have inflation eat up their 15%, and then pay taxes on the 15%, which means they went backward. And I've said that on many occasions. I'm tired of hearing myself say it. But it bears repeating because it just seems like there's a lot of guys who just are not understanding this. You're not understanding how this works. The goal of saving or savings, the idea of savings, is that you are able to do work. Now, this is part of your division of labor. You're able to work today, and you're able to save your labor in a monetary unit of measurement. Okay, that's something that isn't going to presumably change. So, in other words, like an ounce of I use an example of an ounce of gold. 1 troy ounce is going to be 1 troy ounce, no matter what. We're not going to argue over how many grams are in a troy ounce. We're going to say, no, a troy ounce is a troy ounce. We can agree on that, right? So, the idea is that you can do work now, labor now, and then save your money. And then if you save your money, you can decide to spend it later on, or you can say, well, hey, I've saved enough money that I don't have to work any longer. I can do stuff that I want to do now, right? That's the goal of most people. That's for most men. I'm going to talk to men on this one because this is really the truth for most men. You know, their goal is to get the work out of the way when they're younger because that's what men have going for them, right? Because men aren't really wanted when they're younger by women. What women want is security, right? They want money, okay? So the whole idea for younger men is they go out into the world and they make money and they save it, and then they're able to establish themselves. And then once they're established, they're able to attract, pretty much any woman they want. And you can say, well, that's patriarchal and everything. Like, I don't make the rules, man. When women stop wanting money, then okay, maybe the rules change. But every woman, no matter how much money she makes, even if she's some executive at some company that has a rubber tree plant in the corner of her office, they always seem to want to marry a guy who makes more money than they do, so that way she can retire and have kids. It's just madness, this ridiculous circle. And you can almost tell how many women don't have dads in the home. It's really strange. I won't go into any anecdotal stories on that, of just some of the, younger women that I've had conversations with, because, if they do, it's harder for women to have father figures. Right, so it's a challenge. Actually, this was pointed out to me by, actually one of my proteges a long time ago. She said it's difficult if a woman gets divorced and has a daughter. It's near impossible for that daughter to find a father figure. She can find a daddy, but she can't necessarily find a father figure. Now, that is not the case for men. So men who grow up in fatherless homes, they can go find father figures elsewhere. They can go look around and they can find mentors. It's much easier for them because they grew up, if they grew up in a home without dad, right? I mean, you guys know my history on it. I grew up with no dad in the projects, poverty, abusive, on and on and on. I mean, I have nothing going for me. I don't have any degrees, no plaques on the wall. There's no fancy anything on, I don't even, according to the world, I don't even have an education as far as the world's concerned. So nothing really particularly interesting on paper. And yet I'm not a junkie. I'm not homeless. I'm not any of those things. I've done okay, more or less. I don't discuss it very often, but I'm all right. And that's with growing up with every single handicap going against me, that I should be in jail. Took a personality test that showed it showed it was the Big Five. It's the one that Jordan Peterson talks about all the time, where you test out what you are personality wise, and mine tested out. Apparently, I'm supposed to be a crime boss. I could see that. So